I like to think they had a master plan of me coming into the Alan Partridge franchise down the line. But in actual fact, it was just a tiny part in Saxondale. But I know that they'd come and watched, or Lindsay had come and watched, who's one of the founding fathers of Baby Cow. They'd come and watch me in Edinburgh do a really small thing in someone else's show. And the way she tells it to me anyway, is that she logged that at the time and thought, I think this guy might be someone we can do business with. And that would have been in about 2003. And they did business with me about 4 years after that. So they kept it logged, really, rather than sort of moving into action on that for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So Saxondale was sort of a bit of a trial for you. You were on trial. You had trials.
I had trials. Yeah, I had trials for Coogan, at Feeder Club, Saxondale.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah, it was stressful. I mean, I'm sure we'll go on to talk about the Alan Partridge stuff, but it's probably the same thing there as happened with the Partridge. Was I remember going for, I think I'd been cast in it, but I went for a rehearsal. I don't think it was an audition, but I remember going up in the lift at some production company, and I remember the lift doors opening, and he must have been doing a rehearsal of another scene, because I remember hearing his, to be fair, quite distinctive voice through the door, and it's quite it's quite intimidating, because as you can imagine, and we'll probably move on to this, he's a kind of big hero of mine in terms of whenever anyone comes up to me and says, I'm a massive Partridge fan, that's definitely my kind of background before working with him, was being an obsessive 18-year-old in the mid-90s, just listening and watching all of it. So it was quite odd 10 years later to be stood outside a door and be sort of on the threshold of working with him.
Mm. And I mean, it seems like the Gibbons brothers had not a dissimilar trajectory in that they were both fans of the original wave of Partridge too. So it's kind of like I guess it's testament to his endurance as a comedy character that you've got a generation of people who grew up on the first wave now heavily involved in the second.
Yeah, it's very neat. It's a good system that they've got there. It's a good industry with Partridge.
Absolutely. I mean, so in terms of Simon and the development of Simon, how much of that character did they have before they brought you in? Was it just that they knew Alan needed a foil, or did they say, we really want you involved in some way? What kind of character should that be? I'm curious kind of how fully formed the idea of Simon was before you stepped in.
So that happened where they, so that was all done, and the Saxondale thing was fine, just sort of did a steady job at left back and pretty unspectacular. And then I don't know how much further down the line the Partridge stuff came, but yeah, I remember getting a call from my agent, and I was in Edinburgh, and I was sat next to another comedian in a cafe, and I didn't really say anything. My agent was just sort of going, right, there's this thing that's come in, can you talk? And I was like, yes, think so. And she said, well, they're bringing back Partridge, and they are interested in you being potentially a sidekick for him. And it's quite an interesting phone call to receive. And she said, well, you can't tell anyone yet because they're just still, working out the finer details of that and how it's going to be. But it's looking like that's something that could happen. I remember putting the phone down and being sat next to David O'Doherty, another comedian, and him going, who's that? And me goes, well, my agent. Oh yeah, anything good? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. But sort of deep down thinking, well, that's sort of quite an interesting thing. But yeah, in terms of whether it was to what extent they were sort of writing for me or anything like that, I'll be honest. I feel like they've kind of got a quite good handle on how to write for my guy. But I think at the time that he mainly just, what you see on screen. He's like, he's out of his depth, and he shouldn't be there. He's been accidentally deified by Partridge when actually he doesn't really have anything about him. Least of all, anything that would be useful on a radio show.
Yeah.
And so I'd say it's quite sort of underwritten in terms of like, if you're writing Partridge or if I'm writing Partridge, it's sort of writing Partridge. And so, and the nature of that show was, it was just incessant, like Mid-Morning Matters was just, and that was the beauty of it, the joy of it, was it's just Partridge, and it just is relentless and never ends, and would be probably too much if there wasn't like a foil to bounce off. And so if you look at the scripts on paper, they're exactly how you'd expect them to be and exactly how they should be, with him saying stuff and occasionally me sort of either doing a weak joke or doing a something along the lines of, I don't know whether you should say that because we're on air type thing. And that would be the sort of rhythms of the whole thing. So in terms of how then that fed into my character developing, I think there was just enough there for me to be able to chip in sometimes. And then the rest of it, I think, for me, was done by the actual situation being so horrifically similar in real life to how it was in terms of on the page. As in, I was petrified.
Yeah, both you and Simon have a bit of have a healthy dose of deference to Steve or Alan.
Yeah, I really do believe that was what was going on. I had an enormous amount of imposter syndrome, an enormous amount of I do not want to screw this up, an enormous amount of it's nice that he's asked me to do this, but I don't want to ruin this guy's career. And so Simon and Tim Key were both sort of thinking the same thing, I think, which is, I don't know why I'm here particularly. And so it felt like quite apart from the fact that I'm, in terms of as an actor or performer, it's very rare I do anything where it's kind of anything other than some kind of version of me. I'm not like a sort of Tom Hardy figure, I wouldn't say. I'm not saying that people are saying that about me. I'm saying, I hold my hands up. I sort of try and play myself to a greater or lesser degree. So, in a way, that sort of real uneasiness, that sort of bag of nervousness, was probably what you see on screen. And I was frankly petrified, of mucking it up. And I remember walking out of the first day of filming, feeling pretty sick. Oh God, it's really difficult, and that always, although it became much more comfortable as that first series went on, it never went. And in the second series of Mid-Morning Matters, it was still there, I think, and I think the first day of filming on this time was really, more petrifying than ever. And then I think I really settled after that first day, and that became probably one of the least concerned I've been. But still, it's all there. It's all in my chest. This feeling of uneasiness is all very, very easy to sort of reach for, in a way that, method actors have to sort of try and remember something tragic in their life to bring on the tears. I'm having to remember what it's like to work in the Partridge franchise to feel that anxious. And that's the same feeling now when in this time I hear those great big clomping shoes walking across the studio towards me. And it feels like it's a very natural thing for my character to sort of go almost sort of on the verge of under his breath going, oh Christ.
He's going to ask me to operate this digi-wall again.
Exactly.
It kind of sounds like Sidekick Simon was the role you were born to play in that regard.
Yeah. Well, I would always say Hamlet.